On today's episode of Cubs 360, there's nothing left to talk about for this offseason except for pitching, so in this episode, all we're going to be talking about is pitching. There's some pitchers out on the market that are still available, and we'll go over all of them, both on the trade market and in free agency. That's all happening soon on Cubs 360. Fans, this is episode 6 of the Cubs 360 podcast. I'm your host, Jack. If you're interested in its content, feel free to like and subscribe, and also follow us on Twitter on Cubs360X. So, not much to get to in this episode. The offense is pretty much set in stone unless you want to make an upgraded catcher, which right now that consists of Miguel Amaya and Carson Kelly. In the infield, we pretty much have that set in stone as well, unless last-minute moves happen. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Right now, it consists of Michael Busch at first base, Nico Hoerner at second base, Dansby Swanson at shortstop, and Matt Shaw at third. In the outfield, pretty obvious, Kyle Tucker at right field, PCA at center, Ian Happ at left, and Seiya Suzuki at the DH position. So, just all we need to do really is just go over who could be options for the Cubs pitching. As of right now, our rotation is not quite complete. But obviously we have Justin Steele, Shota Imanaga. We also have Matt Boyd, who we just signed. We also have Jameson Taillon. Will he be a guy that gets moved out? Who knows? But we also signed a pitcher, and I'm going to go over this before we start anything, and it's pretty interesting to bring up. It's Colin Rea. He signed a deal with the Cubs, 1 year, $5 million. He came from the Milwaukee Brewers, and he pretty much is maybe a reliever, but he's also had some starts here and there, especially last year. So could he be a potential starter? Who knows? But I'm going to say he's going to be in a relief position because I feel like that's the safe bet. But if he's a starter at some point, maybe he is. But anyways, we're going to go over some legit starters that could be on the Cubs' radar and guys that they should target. And I'll go over whether they are fits or not with the Chicago Cubs. First off, we're going to go with the big one. That's Roki Sasaki, who played with the Shiba Lot Marines. He is coming over from Japan. He's one of the highest touted international free agents we've seen in quite some time. And obviously there were rumors with him and his agent. They were talking about Shota Imanaga as a way for him to come over to the United States to play baseball. And I do think Roki Sasaki is pretty interesting. Obviously the Cubs have a high reputation for Japanese players, let alone pitchers. Obviously they got Shota Imanaga. They got Yu Darvish in the past. I do think there's a fit there with Roki Sasaki, and what we did learn too is he's not really in it for the money. He really wants to be great. He wants to be the best ever, which is what his agent said on behalf of Roki Sasaki, which I've been saying for the longest time. I think he's going to the Dodgers. I still believe that, but if he isn't worried about the money and he wants to go dominate somewhere and be the guy, that does not scream LA, in my opinion. I do believe another option is the San Diego Padres. Obviously, Yu Darvish is over there, has a very good relationship with Roki Sasaki, so the Padres are another option. I do think the Cubs are really high on this list, but I definitely believe the Dodgers and Padres are heavy favorites for Roki Sasaki, so probably as a plan B option for him, I think the Cubs could be an option, but I just don't really see it right now. Anyways, let's get to the second guy. This is the best free agent pitcher that's played in the MLB throughout the last few years. Obviously, Roki Sasaki hasn't played in the MLB, so the highest regarded MLB free agent pitcher, and that is Jack Flaherty. So Flaherty is in an interesting position. He obviously doesn't really need to sign. Probably see what the market is for him after Roki Sasaki signs, so that's what I could see for him. Obviously, Corbin Burnes, between Christmas and the New Year's, went over to the Arizona Diamondbacks on a 6-year, $210 million contract. He's from there, so it makes a lot of sense on a personal standpoint for him. Flaherty, obviously the last really top-tier free agent pitcher. I think he's a really good option for the Cubs. I don't know what his market really is because, again, it is January 12th when I'm recording this, so it's pretty interesting to see what would happen there. he's obviously, and it came out that he's interested in a shorter term deal with a higher AAV, which, the Cubs, I don't see them having a problem with doing, even with the Corbin Burnes rumors with that. I don't know if Flaherty is the top guy the Cubs are going to be looking at now, but I could be wrong. So I personally like him. I think he's a solid plan B. If we don't get Sasaki, obviously we didn't get Corbin Burnes. So again, I don't really know what he's going to do in free agency, but I think the Cubs should really be after Jack Flaherty if they can't get rookie Sasaki. Anyways, let's get to some trade candidates, because a lot of them are trade candidates. We're going to go over guys that are not going to go to the Cubs, in my opinion, that may or may not be on the trade deadline. The first one from the Marlins, Sandy Alcantara. He was the 2022 National League Cy Young winner. He's not going to get traded. The Marlins pretty much confirmed that. He came off of Tommy John surgery. I think he's a really good pitcher, but I think they're waiting to see his value go up a little bit so they can get a better return for him. So Alcantara, related to Kevin Alcantara, Cubs outfield prospect, I do think is a good option for the Cubs if he were to be healthy, but he hasn't been, so I'm not really taking that risk right now. Let's get to the second guy, which is Jordan Montgomery out of the Arizona Diamondbacks. This makes a lot of sense for the Diamondbacks. They want to get rid of him. They were talking about sending him to the Cubs for Cody Bellinger. The Cubs said no to that, and I don't really think the Cubs want Jordan Montgomery. At least I personally don't want him. He really wasn't good this past year with Arizona. He had a really good year with St. Louis when he got traded to Texas and won the World Series with them a couple years ago, but his value is pretty low, and for the contract that he got from the Diamondbacks, I don't think it's worth taking on, in my opinion. They'd have to give up a lot of money for that to happen, and it's just something I wouldn't be comfortable doing. Anyways, let's get to the third guy, which I think is pretty unlikely. It's Dylan Cease from the San Diego Padres. Obviously, the Padres got him from the Chicago White Sox last winter. I was pretty confused as to why I saw him as a trade target, but he has 1 year left on his contract, and who knows what will happen with him. The Padres can keep him and go on maybe one more big run with him, but who knows? I don't think Dylan Cease would be a guy that would probably extend with the Cubs, so therefore I wouldn't really be comfortable trading for a lot of assets for him, especially if he's just going to walk in a year. So as much as I really like Dylan Cease as a pitcher, he's really good. I don't know if that's another good option there. Anyways, there's two more guys that I want to talk about for starters. We'll get to some relievers as well. The first one, this is the guy we've been talking about for the majority of the winter, and that's Luis Castillo from the Seattle Mariners. Luis Castillo is another interesting name. He's from the Seattle Mariners. They have a surplus of pitchers. They have 4 legit aces in there. They have Logan Gilbert, they have Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, and George Kirby. I think the Mariners, they desperately need offense, and I know things haven't really gone to fruition with the Cubs, especially since they traded Isaac Paredes in the Kyle Tucker deal. I don't know if Castillo would make sense for the Cubs in terms of a trade. And it really sucks because I really like Luis Castillo and I definitely think they should trade for him. But the real question is, do they have the assets Seattle's looking for? Seattle's been looking for some MLB offense, and they've been talking about Nico Hoerner, which if you want Nico Hoerner for your offense, I really don't understand that if you're Seattle. His offense isn't really that good, to be honest. He's really good because of his defense. And a lot of Cubs fans know that. So again, Luis Castillo, maybe you trade him for prospects, and then Mariners, they also have a very good prospect pool, so maybe you get a couple prospects, you flip some more prospects for MLB offense talent. So we'll see what happens there, but if they want to move off some money, because Castillo makes a lot of money. I think $22.75 million is the cap hit towards the luxury tax for any team. I think if you want to get off that money, get some prospects, and then use that money left over to go for some offense, maybe that's something Seattle would consider doing. Because at this point, I don't really think any team's going to be trading offense for Luis Castillo, and they don't really need to trade him. But I do think if you're Seattle, it would make sense to do so if you can get some offense. Anyways, we're going to go to another guy, and I think this is somewhat possible. I don't really know. I would have to ask this fan base. It's Zach Gallen from the Arizona Diamondbacks. I've seen some rumors that they could trade him, especially now that they have Corbin Burnes. And the problem with Zach Gallen, like Dylan Cease, he has 1 year left on his contract. He's the Scott Boras client, so that definitely means he could be on the move next year from Arizona. Zach Gallen, when he's healthy, he's a Cy Young candidate, and there's no doubt about that. I really think highly of Zach Gallen, and I think he would be awesome in a Chicago Cubs uniform. But again, the price might be a little bit high, and Again, he's got 1 year left on his deal. I think he would be a definitely bona fide ace for the Cubs if he were to be acquired by them. So Zach Gallen, again, I like him, and we'll see if a trade maybe were to happen. They were obviously in on Roki Sasaki. The Diamondbacks were a surprise team, and if they were able to do that, they were going to move on from Zach Gallen because he has 1 year left on his deal, and Jordan Montgomery for obvious reasons. Now let's get to some relief pitchers. The first one I'm going to talk about is AJ Minter, who was most recently with the Atlanta Braves. I don't really think that's going to be the plan A for Jed Hoyer and the Cubs. He could be an option. He's a left-hander, and obviously the bullpen definitely needs some lefties, but as a closer, I don't know if that's the number one option, but who knows. Another guy that I don't think is the plan A, but I've seen rumors about, is Kirby Yates, who is most recently with the Texas Rangers. I personally like Kirby Yates. He was an all-star, but my worry with him is his age. He's 38 years old. I don't know if he has really that much juice left as a closer, so maybe that's an option, but again, I don't know if he's the plan A there. There's two guys in particular that I really want to talk about. The first one is Kyle Finnegan, who is with the Washington Nationals. I think he had like 38 saves this past season with Washington. He was a really good closer for the Nationals. I know there were some questions with his underlying stats, but he's 33 years old, a lot younger than 38. But I do believe Kyle Finnegan is one of the better closers that is on the open market. He was obviously non-tendered by the Washington Nationals. I think that's definitely a guy that the Cubs should be looking after. Another guy, and this is like the big one that I've seen a ton of rumors with the Cubs, is Carlos Estevez. So obviously he was with the Angels. He got traded to the Philadelphia Phillies. He was their closer for the majority of the time when he was in Philadelphia. He had some long relief and middle relief appearances here and there, but I think Estevez is like the big closer that's left on the market. Obviously Jeff Hoffman went to the Toronto Blue Jays. Estevez, he's probably looking at a little bit more than $10 million, which I don't really mind giving him. It really depends on what the payroll for the Cubs would look like, because, again, who knows what happens between now and when spring training starts, because there's a ton of moves left to be made, but if they don't make any moves, then there's still some in-house guys that they could look at, and obviously for starters, Javier Assad and Jordan Wicks, obviously two young pitchers that have made some starts. Obviously, Javier Assad making a lot more starts. He was consistently in the rotation. I think he struggled, especially in the second half of the season. So I don't really know if that's a guy that I trust to be in the starting rotation consistently, but I could be wrong there. Jordan Wicks, same thing. I think he was injured at some point. I can't remember off the top of my head. But again, he's had his moments where he's actually looked good and other times where he struggled. He was a former first-round pick from the Chicago Cubs. So again, Jordan Wicks, definitely a backup option, but I think you could maybe trade him for some starting pitching, definitely. But again, that really depends on what Jed Hoyer does. Another guy, Ben Brown, he was hurt for the most of the year. He's had some starting appearances, but I definitely believe he has the potential to be a good closer for the Chicago Cubs, or at least a setup man. Obviously, a guy that I can pretty much relate him to a little bit, not to the extent of this guy, is Mason Miller. So Mason Miller, again, he was one of the better closers, I think one of the best in the league, without a doubt. So, again, maybe he's a guy that the Chicago Cubs would definitely look at in terms of Ben Brown as a closer, if not a setup man. And the last one, obviously, is Porter Hodge. I think Porter Hodge, who was the closer for the end of the regular season for the Cubs, he had a pretty good strikeout rate when Hector Neris was designated for assignment. So Porter Hodge, I definitely could see as another option as a closer for next season, but who knows? That's up for Jed Hoyer to decide. We're not the ones that are in charge of the front office, unfortunately, because I think there's moves that the Chicago Cubs could make that I don't think ownership is really comfortable doing, and Jed Hoyer obviously can't do that. But anyways, give me your thoughts on this. This is a much shorter episode compared to previous episodes. There really isn't much to talk about in this offseason anymore. If there's any breaking news that comes out for the Cubs, obviously I'll post about that. I'll try to get some more episodes out here and there. I know I took a long break between my last episode. It was before even the Cody Bellinger trade happened. So that's really what's been going on with the Cubs offseason. Nothing much. It's been all rumors and nothing really coming to fruition. So hopefully I try to get some more videos out here for you. But anyways, give me your thoughts on all these rumors. Give me your thoughts on who the Cubs could target for starters and relief pitchers. And I will see you for the next episode of Cubs 360. So far, this is Jack from Cubs 360. And as always, go Cubs go.